Welcome back. In the pots today we have Mount Fuji. A beautiful combination of reds and grays. If you haven't seen the inspiration for this one, it is basically a piece of art in itself. So we got a nice, beautiful photo of Mount Fuji. Not realistic, of course, but it's got some reds, some grays, lots of whites, and that's basically what we're trying to portray here. Big reveal at the end. I'll make sure to show you that inspiration. We've got our yarn in the pot. We are doing fingering weight yet again. So, adding the soak, making sure that we got enough moisture in there to get this dye to travel a little bit. The more soak you add, the more the dye is going to travel. So we're going to throw some nice mouse gray onto the one side. I've had some questions. What is mouse gray? To me, mouse gray is a nice light gray. It might have a little bit of a blue tinge to it, but for the most part, it is just a nice subtle gray. So if you take a black and you make it pastel, you're going to get yourself some mouse gray. On the other side of things, a little bit more gray, but we're going to go even lighter. So in about 64 ounces of water, we have about approximately maybe a 30 seconds of black in here, which is just enough basically to tint the water. So on this side, straight grays, a little bit of white. On the other side, we're going to flip it over. We're going to throw some red in there. So cook it off real quick. Doesn't have to be very long, 5 or 6 minutes. When you're working with grays, especially like a pastel gray, it really doesn't take much to get these things to set. There is going to be no dye whatsoever that we have to worry about moving around. Just straight clear water. So on this side here, we're going to get these flipped over and then we're going to add some of that red. I've mentioned in the past that red is kind of one of those colors. It likes to spread. It likes to make a mess of things if you're not careful with it. So we are going to cook it off for a good long while on this side. This is actually the same red that we were using in St. Nick. So it is extremely concentrated, of course. Now, in order to preserve the white on the other side of these skeins, we are throwing just a little bit of that pastel gray on the right-hand side, and then we're going to heavily saturate this red on the other side. And you can see it's going to travel across. It's going to make a mess of things. There is nothing I can do to stop that from happening, but this is also going to saturate quite far into the yarn. So even though we're mixing it up, chances are it is going to push itself down into the gray that's on the other side and kind of dye that up a little bit as well. We're going to see that at the end. Well, not at the end, actually, in just a few minutes here. So a little bit of darker gray into the middle. We do have that red that's come across the skein. And I will point out, if you notice, there seems to be a lot more red that ended up on the top than the bottom of this pot. So even though all of your skeins are coming from the exact same dye lot and the exact same batch, there can be some huge differences when it comes to how the skeins actually dye up. So one thing that we do during the shipping process is we will take those skeins and we will hold them side by side, especially in multi-skein projects, to make sure that we are grabbing ones that are pretty much the same through and through. Right? You don't want to have one that's got a lot of red in it and another one that has next to no red in it. That's going to cause us some problems. So into the twister here. This is our fingering weight in 80/20 merino nylon superwash. And you can see some of that whites come through. We got some of that bright cherry red in there. It does kind of fade out into a nice light pink across the gray, which is just fine. No problems with that at all. That dye is going to exhaust that way, and there is not a whole lot you can do to actually stop it. So the best thing you can do when working with yarn, working with dyes, get to know your dyes, get to know how they're going to react with the yarn, and basically take that into account before you even start. Just know red's going to do its thing. It's going to take a move across. It's going to go deep. It's going to saturate other colors, and take that into account when you're dyeing it in the first place. Just know that's going to happen, and you know, if you plan for it, then you plan for it. All right, so twisted up next was our DK weight. It is also an 80/20 merino nylon superwash. Nice and light, nice and fluffy. Beautiful base to work with. As I say in every video, make sure you tuck those ends in. It really crisps up these skeins, makes them look nice and beautiful. All right, worsted weight. Let's get the worsted in there. My personal favorite base, 100% merino. Absolutely beautiful for anybody looking to make a sweater, crochet, blanket, you name it, something a little bit heavier. Worsted is definitely my go-to. You know, looking at these in the twister, they kind of remind me of candy canes. Not quite, but pretty close. Beautiful little fluffy candy canes. Wrong season for it, I know. All right, tucking those ends in, we can kind of see some of that pink showing through a little bit. I mean, it's not really pink, but the red, of course, as it fades out, will push towards some of those pinker fades. So something to keep in mind as well. You can kind of see that nice vibrant red in there, and then, you know, just kind of exhausts out into that lighter red, that pinky range of things. Up last, we have our chunky weight. Also 100% merino superwash. Beautiful base. 100 meters for 100 grams. A nice heavy base. Our chunky base tends to suck out colors a little bit more, and it tends to be a little bit more vibrant. So I do find the chunky base might show a little bit more white than other bases, but it also produces brighter colors than some of our other bases. For example, our fingering weight. Absolutely love working with the fingering weight when we're dyeing yarn, but the chunky weight generally outperforms if we're talking about vibrancy of color. Few seconds here, we'll get this one cleaned up, and then we will toss them over into the light box. I'll show all 4 weights side by side, so we can kind of see how they all play together. Fingering weight, we can see kind of those deep, dark burgundies, vibrant reds, pushing out into that grayish pink. Up beside that, we've got our DK weight. I find the DK weight actually produces a little bit more vibrant colors, but we get a lot more white with the DK weight. It tends to suck up that dye a lot faster. So even if I had all 4 skeins in the exact same pot, you would find the DK weight would just be a little bit more white, and you can clearly see that here. Worsted weight, same thing. We got some nice vibrant colors coming through. I find the fingering weight and the worsted weight generally tend to be similar in their sucking up of the dyes. Fingering weight, obviously that dye seems to go a little bit further, travel across the skein, we get a little bit less white, and then we move over into the chunky weight. Those reds really popping. You can see them. Beautiful. All right. Let's get these into the Addy Express, get a swatch out. Now, as you can see, I'm not seeing a lot of patterning. There is a little bit of striping going on there, but not a ton. So if we were talking about a sock, I would most likely see some spiraling. If we're talking about a sweater, it would be quite variegated. And here, those pinks are really pulling through here in this swatch. You can really see them standing out next to the reds there as that red is kind of exhausting out into the gray. So we're going to cake it up real quick and make sure that that saturation is all the way through the cake to the best of our abilities. You never want to have too much white or too much red kind of showing up in one place, where like the outside of the cake versus the inside of the cake. But we can kind of see those color runs flipping through the cake here real quick. Turn it up to max. Nothing but a blur. All right, just about done here. I can already tell you that the saturation on this one's looking great. Looks like it all came through just nice. So we got those nice, bright, vibrant, burgundy reds pulling through, a little bit of the lighter saturation in the pinks. And then if we look at the outside, we're seeing that red does travel all the way through the skein, through and through. So not too much concern on the saturation point. Yes, some of the reds did tend to pool at the top, but that is still on the same length of thread. So time for some pairings. First up, we've got Mount Fuji. Then up beside that, Autumn's Farewell. So we're still kind of running some of that reddish burgundy here. pushing a little bit more into the tans and browns. Upside that one, we have Captivating Cardinal, which is really pushing that red saturation. You can still see some of that red kind of pulling over into the realm of the pinks. And there's also some chestnut sprinkling in there. I know it's not really showing through here, but there is a little bit of chestnut sprinkling. Chestnut tends to produce reds and browns and blues. It's a beautiful combination. Up beside that one, we have Scarlet Woods, which is really pushing deep into those dark reds, dark burgundies, little hint of, I guess it's kind of a burgundy, more of a purple towards the top there of that skein. You can kind of see that coming out there. Up beside that one, we have Crimson Moon. Now, one thing we did with Crimson Moon is we put some black dye, just some straight black dye in there, and it tends to suck up into the skein extremely quickly. I love how it kind of patches up on the hank itself. We're going to have to do a Crimson Moon one day. I'll show you that one. And finally, last but not least, we've got Firestarter. So this one's taking those same reds, kind of going a little bit lighter, pushing over into the oranges and yellows. If you haven't seen Firestarter, it is a great summertime colorway. Firestarter is like it's a flame on wood. It's a campfire. It's a beautiful colorway. Love that one. So up next, we're going to do some of the semi-solids. Mount Fuji, of course. Up beside that, Mouse Gray. So this Mouse Gray is actually quite a bit throughout this skein. Our semi-solid Mouse Gray is a little bit darker. We went a little bit more pastel with the Mount Fuji on the gray, but same dye put into it, just a little bit lighter. Up next, we have Ruby Red. Nice bright red. That's one of our new semi-solids. Then we have the Burgundy. I find this one matches up quite well with the reds in Mount Fuji. Last but not least, oh, sorry, not last. I've still got two more. We got Charcoal. And then up last, we've got the Ecru Undyed. Kind of pair up with the whites that are in Mount Fuji there. So Ecru, it's not a pure white, and I know Mount Fuji kind of looks like it's got a pure white in it. It is not. It is almost of a yellow. That's why we call it Ecru Undyed. So it's kind of a creamy color. Here you can see a set of 3 fingering weight. As always, we do a swatch, last photo of every listing on the website, and or most of our new colorways have swatches right in the inspiration photo. Here's that big reveal, Mount Fuji. Thank you so much for stopping by. We'll see you again next time.